Hello, and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. I hope everyone had a good holiday season and a good secular New Year. I had kind of a hectic one. One of the interesting points of my holiday was going to a Yule ritual. It was a beautiful ritual, but afterwards the altar burnt to the ground. I mean, it didn't just catch on fire, the whole thing burnt to the ground. That was probably the most interesting and memorable ritual that any of us had been to. And it inspired me for today's topic, because this is information that applies to any pagan. Altar and ritual safety. So, whether you're Egyptian pagan or not, please share this information with friends, because you never know when you might need it. Let's break this down into components, beginning with candles. And just a bit of technical terminology. This is a teolite candle. This is a votive. And this is a taper. Now, any candle, regardless of what kind, you really need to put it in some kind of a holder. These I have in glass holders. What happened with the altar at Yule is they had put votive candles directly onto the Yule log and had put pine and evergreen branches around it. So as the votive candle melted down, it got lower and wax saturated into the wood, and it caught in the pine needles, and poof, the whole thing went up in flames. So when you put a candle somewhere, aside from putting it in some kind of a holder, and decorative ones work really well, imagine a sphere of inflammable space. You want to make a space around this candle where nothing can catch it. Don't put anything close to it. Don't put anything over it. Make like there's a sphere of just empty space around that candle. And make it bigger than you think you're going to need, because remember, there's heat rising from this thing, and if you leave it unattended, something could get hotter and hotter and catch. Now, tapers. And I have seen this at so many outdoor rituals. Someone goes to light tapers that are on the altar, and it's outdoors, the wind is blowing, we've invoked the elements, and air seems to blow out those tapers. So they end up being there for the look more than for burning. But what I would suggest to people is, if you can get them, candles that come in jars kind of eliminate that problem, and you also shield the flame from things that it might catch. Also keep that sphere around it. But you can get these at Mexican grocery stores. If there's a Wally World, Walmart in your area that serves a Latino community, a lot of times they'll have these candles, and some of them have the Santeria images printed on them, but some of them are just blank, and so you can get them in all different colors. It's really great. I use these and reuse the jars once I've burned them down. That's one option that you've got. And also, if you were to accidentally knock it down, it's going to spill wax out, yes, but you don't have the flame going directly onto your altar cloth. But sometimes what you end up, I did this with a Feast of Sokar rite that we did around Samhain. We took some votives and put them on the ground, but we ended up taking aluminum foil and making makeshift holders for them, which helped. And when you put things on the ground, then you have the next issue of you got to watch what you're brushing over that candle, because something might catch. That brings us to our next component, which is regalia. In short, watch those sleeves. I wear a short sleeve vestment, but a lot of folks, especially in mainstream Wicca, have garments that have very long sleeves. So obviously you would want to watch, as you're working over an altar and you've got a long sleeve, you don't want it brushing over a candle and catching something. Apparently that's happened to some of the folks at the circle that I attended the open Yule service with. Somebody made the famous last words of saying, well, it's not a ritual unless we set something on fire. They certainly did that time. Gotta love them. Another thing you'll want to keep in mind, though, when it comes to garb is make sure it's a good fit. And I'm not talking about just the robes. Cloaks, even I have one. And they come in really handy for winter rituals like Yule. And, of course, Imbolc is coming up. And in a lot of places, that's still a pretty cold part of the year. You want to make sure, obviously, that you watch where things are draping, but you want to make sure it's a good fit, too. I mean, you don't want to be walking around in the circle and end up tripping, and hurting yourself. Make sure that you have a good fit and also freedom of movement. And be season appropriate. You don't want to freeze yourself at Yule or have heat exhaustion at Lammas or Wep Runpet for those of us who are of the Kemetic persuasion. Also you want to anticipate changes in the weather. There was the first Yule ritual I ever went to. It was sunny and kind of warm and windy that afternoon. So I wore a robe kind of like this one here, just different colors. It was not a vestment, for officiating. But as the sun went down, the moon was coming up, the wind picked up, and I froze my butt off. I was really glad I had this cloak with me, because otherwise I would have been a popsicle in the middle of the Yule ritual. So, especially in the spring and fall and the winter months, you might have to worry about changes. And of course, those of you who are south of the equator in Australia, it's going to be the reverse. Yule, from what I understand, it's the middle of summertime for y'all, but Lammas would be in the wintertime, so same rules apply. Another safety consideration, athames, or athame, as some people pronounce it. Either way, while they are typically, from what I understand, dulled for ritual use, I don't own an athame myself. This is actually my letter opener. Make a pretty cool athame, though, wouldn't it? But you have to keep in mind, even though it's dull, you can still hurt yourself with it. Plenty of people get cut by dull knives, just as plenty of people accidentally shoot themselves with guns that are supposedly unloaded. Always treat it as though it could hurt you. A bit of safety that I have to observe in the rituals that I do, we smash red pottery. That's an Egyptian practice. And to do that, we always do it outdoors. And, inherently there's some danger in that because, you're breaking ceramic. But what I tell people is don't go barefoot, and before we actually get to that part, I tell them back up, because when we throw that onto the ground, it tends to send shards everywhere. And so, you have to be very careful with that. If there's something that you're doing in a particular rite that might be dangerous, take precautions ahead of time and let everyone know, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. Next up, brews and oils. If you're one of those folks, a kitchen witch or, a herbal witch, one of those folks who does this sort of thing, you want to know your ingredients and their effects. Are you using something that could be poisonous, something that could be caustic, or that maybe contraindicates something else? That's something you want to keep in mind. Another story, something that happened to a guy I know in a circle, the lady who was hosting this and who supplied the oil for anointing was using straight cinnamon oil. And if you don't know this, cinnamon straight can burn. And so, of course, she's marking the pentacle on people's foreheads. And my friend who's explaining this said that as they were going through the ritual, it just got hotter and hotter, and he could feel it burning on his forehead. And he's thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go to work the next day, and I'm going to have a pentagram burned onto my forehead, and they're going to want to know what's going on. So, the way to avoid having problems like that is to make sure that you're using something that's not, a harsh ingredient, or if there's a way that you can cut it, do that. Mix it with jojoba oil, I hope I'm saying that right, or something like that, so that it won't be, so harsh. And also, if you're going to be making something to give to people, make sure you're not giving someone an allergen, something they might have a sensitivity to. Check if someone is pregnant, before burning something, administering anything, because, for example, sage, if it's ingested, is a potential abortifacient. I would encourage everyone to go and research further on this if herbology is something you have an interest in. But that was something else that I also have heard people complain about, is someone was burning sage and there was a pregnant woman. I don't think smudging causes any potential risks, but again, knowledge of your ingredients will help you and potentially avoid a problem like that. And of course, if you know someone in your circle is allergic to pecans or strawberries or something like that, don't have that in the food, the cakes and ale or whatever that you're going to be using. Lastly, consider your environment. Obviously, you want to check the weather forecast before doing a ritual outdoors, and have a backup plan in case there's, rain or storms, certainly. You don't want to be invoking the elements and, get struck by lightning or something. Have a fire extinguisher or water hose and a bucket ready. And when I say have it ready, have the water hose hooked up. Know where it is, so that if you end up like our group did, the altar is on fire, we've got to put it out. Where's the water hose? Where are your buckets? We took several minutes to find that stuff. Fortunately, a couple of people, we divided the labor. A couple of people went to do that. I was one of the folks that went down, and we were able to yank off what we could from the altar to salvage some of the offerings that we were going to give to the homeless shelter, some canned goods and things like that. But one of those tables, well, really both of them, were a total loss. Something else to keep in mind, those plastic tables that you get from Office Depot, if they catch fire, they will burn through the metal. We found this out. But some other environmental factors to consider. If you're going to an open circle, a ritual with a new group, if you've never been before, don't go by yourself. Bring a friend with you if you can. I realize that a lot of groups are very picky about who they let in, but make sure that there's somebody who's going to be there. And have your cell phone with you. Obviously you're going to be turning it off during the ritual itself, but have it available. Have a way to get home, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where they might be doing something, there might be sexual rights or something, or who knows, or you may just get weirded out and say, what, I don't like the way this group works. There might be something going on after the ceremony. So you want to be able to have, ways to protect yourself just in case. And also, you don't want to drive yourself home if there was alcohol involved at the ritual. For example, if you've been at a sumble where everyone's been passing around, the mead, obviously you don't want to, drink and drive. So make sure that you have a plan if alcohol is going to be involved in the ritual. If they can let you stay overnight, or that somebody else is going to be driving who is sober, and so on. One other thing, on the subject of group safety and what to do if you're going to a new group for the first time, I've got a section on safety not only for groups, but also tips for those of you interested in going to pagan festivals or conventions in Circle of the Sun. Rites and celebrations for Egyptian pagans and Kemetics. I've gone to a wide variety of conventions, science fiction, anime, you name it, over the years, and seen some pretty crazy things go on, and put a little bit of that experience into a section on conning. No, not that kind. So, in summation, rituals are a time of celebration, and it's something that you want to enjoy. It's a time for us to give thanks and all of those good things. So a few simple precautions will make sure that it stays that way and doesn't end up being a tragedy. Besides, it certainly doesn't help our image if news stories run about bizarre things. I actually read a news story a couple of years ago about a Wiccan group, I think it was in Indiana somewhere, and knowing my luck, somebody from that group is going to be watching this, but from what I read, they were invoking the elements. Somebody had a sword, went to drive it into the earth and stabbed himself in the foot. Ended up in the hospital, and the story ended up in the news. That's the kind of thing that doesn't make us as pagans look terribly bright. And we're really a much more intelligent and creative bunch than that. We, as a group of people, we have so much more potential than, dumb twists of luck like that would give us credit for. So, be safe, protect yourself, and hopefully this will give you something to help you with your pagan or Kemetic practice. For the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon, wishing you, case in point, Senebti.